Welcome everybody to this Sonance Professional webinar. We really appreciate your time and thank you for sharing it with us for this presentation today. We're going to be running through our newly acquired brand name of Blaze Audio, which is a Sonance company now. And we're very honoured to have today two people from Sonance directly. First of all, let me introduce Paxson Laird. Paxson is the Director of Sales Engineering, so has been with Sonance for many years and been in the industry for many years as well. So Paxson will be leading the presentation today, and accompanying him is Shane Dempsey. Shane is the Australian-New Zealand Sales Director for both the residential and professional products here in Australia and New Zealand, and we welcome Shane as well to chime in as we go. If anybody has any questions during the course of the presentation, please open up your Q&A window, post them into there, and we'll endeavour to answer them as we can as we're moving along. And lastly, before I hand over, this session is being recorded, so we'll have an edited version of that available for you on request or to ask your account manager for. We'll be able to send that through to you for your review or sharing with any of your colleagues or staff members. So let's get stuck into it. Paxson, Shane, over to you, and thank you very much for your time. It's greatly appreciated.
Yeah, thank you so much, Michael. I really appreciate it. Shane, did you want to say hello to the crowd before we jump into the presentation?
I surely will say hello to the crowd. Yeah. As Michael kindly introduced me there, I'm based in Australia, so I'm in New South Wales. If I haven't met you before, I look forward to meeting you over the coming weeks and months. Been here for a few years now, and I'm available to everyone and anyone on this call for support or questions or just a good old chat. You can reach me at shaned@sonance.com. Feel free to reach out to me whenever you want, and I'll endeavour to either answer your question or get you the answers that you require. Paxson, I'm going to hand it over to you. It was great to get to know you over the last year now that you're with the team, 2 years that you're with the team. Yeah. And I look forward to hearing your presentation on Blaze and Sonance Professional.
Cool. All right, well, thank you all so much for joining us. Michael, Shane, thank you for the introduction. As Michael said, my name is Paxson Laird. I'm the Director of Sales Engineering. I'm based in the US, but we do have a team globally here to support you guys. Of course, Shane locally, and then other folks across the globe for technical support, design services, and whatever other support that you might need. Shane is, of course, a fantastic resource, so hopefully if you don't know him yet, you'll get a chance to know him soon. But then we have our information on our website as well. So if you're looking to reach out to somebody and need a little extra support, you can reach out direct or of course through Amber, who is a fantastic partner of ours, of course local. They're supporting all of you. So as Michael said, we're going to focus primarily on the Blaze Audio acquisition and the electronics, which was the reason that we did the Blaze Audio acquisition. But before we did that, I just wanted to do a really quick introduction to Sonance for anybody that's not quite as familiar with us. So this is our hometown, San Clemente, California. We're basically right at the tip of that A is where our offices are. So a beautiful location. If you find yourself coming over to Southern California, let Shane know, and we'd love to host tours at our facility. So if you have the opportunity to come by and see us, please do let us know. Be great to see you in San Clemente. Sonance was founded by Scott Struthers and Jeff Spencer. These two guys met in the Midwest in the US in college. It's really, really cold there, and they decided they wanted to move somewhere warm, so they kind of hopped in the van after college, moved to Southern California, and started an AV installation business. And they were primarily doing residential installation. What they found is, of course, this is a modern look, but they were installing these big box speakers, right, on the floor and bookshelves, and their customers just didn't like it, right? This was high-end residences, and they wanted a cleaner look. What was done at that time was you took apart bookshelf speakers, you took apart car audio speakers, and you kind of installed them in the house. And their customers and they wanted something a little bit higher end in the finish. And so in the early 80s, they created the first commercially viable in-wall loudspeaker. And this is what kicked off Sonance. This was the Sonance One, and it was first built in 1983. and really kicked off our idea, or thinking about audio, or thinking about audio installation. And the company's carried forth for the last 40 years. We're still privately owned by Scott and Jeff. They have an executive leadership team that manages the company now. They kind of come around and see us at events and pop in every now and again, but they really have stepped out of the company. They've actually put the company into a trust, so they're endeavoring to make sure that we continue to be privately held. And that trust feeds a lot of their philanthropic organizations that they really focus on now, which is fantastic to see. So the profits from the company go to a lot of different efforts around the world, supporting growth in struggling nations, as well as home for us in Southern California. So two great guys. If you get to meet them, I think you'll really enjoy them. So that's a little bit about the company. Didn't want to spend a ton of time, but did want to let you know a little bit about who we are and where we're located. But the focus today is on Blaze by Sonance and really on our amplifiers that came over. So as I just mentioned, we've been around for 40 years. We've been doing a lot of different development around loudspeakers, how they integrate into spaces, both for residential, commercial, as well as marine. And we had some electronics, but especially in the commercial space, we didn't have a lot of offerings. And so in July of 2025, we purchased Blaze Audio. And the reason that we purchased them was that they had a robust portfolio of 21 amplifiers that were really in the sweet spot of where we are in the market. So as we look at commercial audio, that's retail, residential, hospitality, sports and fitness, house of worship, and corporate and education type of work. And these amplifiers align really well with where we sit. So it was a good match for us. It was also really good for us for their global distribution because they had some strengths in Europe that we were a little bit weaker on in Sonance. And so bringing over some of their expertise was also beneficial. As we look at the lines of amplifiers, it's really broken down into two primary lines. We have the Power Zone family and the Power Zone Connect. Easiest way to think about that is Power Zone are basically dumb amplifiers. Power Zone Connect are going to include DSP in the box. As we look at the Power Zone family, right, so this is the dumb amplifiers. There's three different models. There's 2x250, 4x500, and 4x1000. As you're looking across all of our amplifiers, and I'm about to show you a whole bunch more, so we're not going to go through every single model, but the overall model number, so if we look at the 252, the 250 is the total wattage, and then the last digit is always going to be the number of channels, right? So 252, 250 watts across two channels. Okay. And that means total power as we're looking at it within this amplifier series. These amplifiers, as you can see from them, are really straightforward. There's a couple of knobs on the front based on the number of channels that provide your volume control. And then we'll zoom in on the back panel in just a second, but that's going to be just your I/O as well as your some really basic GPIO control and dip switches used to set this up. So no computer needed to do configuration, no advanced DSPs in these. No advanced DSP, but they do include power sharing. So you can asymmetrically share power on the 252 and the 504. So, across two channels, you can do power sharing up to the total wattage of any of the two channels combined. And they're able to drive low impedance or high impedance loads as you're connecting to the amplifier. If we look on the back panel, the other two are going to look exactly the same, just based on the number of channels, and then of course the overall width of the amplifier. But you'll see it's basic amplifier connections, basic balanced input connections, and these are going to be line level only on this amplifier series. And then the GPIO is going to give you 10K pot volume control, as well as the ability to mute or put the amplifier into standby if you need to. The dip switches are going to just do basic configuration, whether it's high impedance or low impedance. Two kind of unique things that are nice that they also allow you to do, though, is you can completely lock out the front panel. So if the end user wants their volume to be completely fixed, you can configure it that way. or you can actually set it up so that you're setting a max volume as you're turning up the volume. So to do that, you turn up the volume to where you want it to be, you flip that dip switch, and then as the user is adjusting their volume, they'll be able to turn the knob past that point, but it won't affect the volume control anymore. So when you're working with a customer that says, this is as loud as I ever want my staff to turn up the volume, you can set it up for them so that they can't go beyond that. But like I said, these amplifiers are designed to be really quick, really easy to work with, just good, clean power. Okay. Any questions about those before I jump into PowerZone Connect?
Can't see any in the Q&A just yet, mate.
All right, perfect. And please do ask any questions. I know that amplifier line is really simple, really straightforward, but ask anything that you might want to learn more about as we're going through this. So I just changed this over to the PowerZone Connect family. And these are really zone processing amplifiers. We'll take a look at the software after we go through the hardware so you can see a little bit more what that means. But the idea from these amplifiers is that if you're working with a simplistic or basic space where you don't necessarily need a DSP, we can handle a lot of the processing with these. So if you think of that simple cafe, a couple of zones in a restaurant, a couple of zones in a retail space where you just have a handful of sources, we're going to be able to manage most of those smaller to even mid-size applications with the amplifier itself, with the controls that we have, and without necessarily needing a separate DSP. There's of course plenty of times that you'll need to put a DSP in front of these amplifiers, and we do have controls to make that possible and easy, but they're really powerful for the types of devices that these are. So you'll see across the bottom, we do have 12 different versions of the PowerZone Connect family, all the way from a 2-channel 120 watt up to an 8-channel 6,000 watt amplifier. We kind of have them divided up based on the size of the amplifier, so that's both for power, but also a little bit for the way that they're configured. As we look at the half rack unit and the full rack units, those are going to include power sharing. So just like the PowerZone amplifiers that we just talked about, you'll be able to asymmetrically share power across 2 channels, or 2-channel pairs, excuse me, of the amplifier. When we get into the 2RU, you're going to have to bridge for additional power. We're not going to have power sharing on those amplifiers. These can, of course, drive low impedance and high impedance loads, but for 70, 100, or 100 volt loads, you do need to bridge pairs on this amplifier line right now. So when you're working with a 100 volt system, just make sure that you're planning that. You'll see on the spec sheets, it mostly doubles the power when you bridge in 100 volt mode, but just double check that as you're going through. There are some that are slightly less than 100% doubling. As far as the controls on these, they are set up either through network port, either Wi-Fi or wired network, and then they have some basic GPIO for additional control. You'll see on the bullet points, those do have a 5-year warranty, and they are ENERGY STAR compliant if you have any projects that require that. I'm just going to pull up a back panel view here. So this is an 8-channel version. The 2 and the 4-channel version are going to look identical to this, just fewer inputs and fewer outputs. So the number of amplifier channels also determines the number of input channels that we have. You'll see we have 8 unbalanced inputs on this, and then 8 balanced inputs for analog inputs. You're going to select one or the other just by the physical devices that you have selected, and then on the software side, you'll just be selecting the input number that you're using. The balanced inputs, though, can be either mic or line level. So there's no phantom power. If you need to use a device with phantom power, you do have to have an external phantom power supply for it. But you can plug in the dynamic microphone directly into this, and we'll see how you can either mix it or use it in a ducking mode to go over top of your music sources.
Paxson, we've just got a couple of clarification questions on the power side of things, if you don't mind. From Mark Thompson, are the power ratings for 4, 8, and 16 ohm general loads? That's the first one. And the second one is, what is the lowest ohm level that they can run at? Can they go down to a 2 ohm load?
Yeah, so they can all go down to a 2 ohm load. The 2 RUs are going to maintain their power at 2 ohms. The 1 and the half RU are going to be derated at 2 ohms, but you can drive lower impedance loads on there. The rating at 4 and 8 ohms is the same.
Okay, fantastic. And just a follow-up question in the DSP profiles, which we'll probably get to when we go to the software side of things. But are the Sonance Patio and landscape systems part of the profiles in the DSP for these?
Yeah, that is a fantastic question. We'll look at that at a really high level when we get into the software. We're actually going to go through a software emulation, so we won't be able to look at the full preset library in there. But we do have those presets within the amplifier. We actually have about 300 different presets within the amplifier of all the different Sonance loudspeakers and different configurations for them.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks for the questions. Please do keep them coming. For some stuff, we might push it off till later, but it'll at least remind us to come back to it. So definitely welcome those questions. So getting back to the rear panel, so we were just talking about those analog inputs, and you'll see to the left of the balanced inputs, we do have digital in and out. So those are going to be SPDIF inputs and outputs. So 2 channels of digital audio. That's going to be on every model of the amplifier. You can, of course, plug in a SPDIF device to the input, but what we really see those being used for most often is zone expansion. So taking the output, the digital out of one amplifier, and daisy chaining it to the next one. We'll see this in the software as well, but you can basically pick up any input, any zone, or any mix that you've configured on that device and feed it to the next amplifier. So either using that as zone expansion, like I just mentioned, or actually daisy chaining your input sources to additional zones on a second amplifier. So it makes it really flexible to work with. And then on the GPIO, that's going to provide an option for 10K pot control across any of the zones, or for things like muting and putting it into standby mode. So you can do that as well. So that was the PowerZone Connect. We also have 6 amplifiers or 6 versions of the PowerZone Connect amplifier that include Dante. This is ordered as a separate SKU, so it's not card-based, it's not software-based. You do have to order the Dante version, and it's going to be 4 channels of Dante in and out. So even on the 8-channel versions, you are limited to 4. That's just based on the fact that we're using the Ultimo chip in these amplifiers. Just like the SPDIF that we just talked about, though, you can take the Dante outputs and you can put any input signal, any zone, or any mix onto that Dante output. So if you're looking for larger zone expansion, you can do that using the Dante amplifiers. And of course, it's Dante, so it's going to work well with any other Dante device that you might have on the network. Just be aware of the 6 models that we're limited to that do have Dante. This software, and we're going to look at this, is really simplistic to set up. Basically, if you have a technician and installer that's comfortable setting up, a Wi-Fi network and has some basic audio chops, they'll be able to work with this device. They can do it 2 different ways. You can either just plug in the IP address into your web browser, and the amplifier will serve up the interface for it, or you can download the PowerZone Control Center from our website, which is sonance.com, and you can download software that's going to allow you to connect to many amplifiers, basically any amplifier that's on your network at the same time, and do that setup and configuration.
Paxson, when you mention it's configurable via Wi-Fi, it's broadcasting its own Wi-Fi network, right? So we don't need an additional or external Wi-Fi network to connect to.
That's right, yeah, and we'll see that in the software as well. It can actually broadcast like Shane just said, so you can connect your computer directly to the amplifier, or you can actually put it onto the building Wi-Fi. So it's really flexible in the way that the Wi-Fi has been implemented. Yeah, it's a fantastic point, Shane. The ways that you can set up control, we have what we call the wall M, and this is a zone control wall panel. So it fits in a standard box, and it's going to allow you to do source selection as well as volume control and mute up to 8 zones, depending on the amplifier that you're connected to. It is 1-to-1, so if you're working with multiple amplifiers, you would have to get additional wall M's if you needed to be able to control them. If you're just doing zone expansion or having additional subs, but everything's going to be controlled through that zone, you wouldn't necessarily need an additional wall M to control that. These are really easy to work with. You're basically just pairing it to the amplifier and then setting up what zones you want that end user to see. And then a simplistic interface where you have a rotating knob and a press button to work with this device. The other way that we can control this is actually through a web interface. So you can put a password protection on the amplifier, and then restrict what the end user will see. So if they go to that IP address of the device, they'll just have a dashboard, and we'll see what that looks like in just a second, where they can do their control of the amplifier. skip through little animations there.
Just before we move on, I've just got another question here. The Blaze amplifiers Shane mentioned, and you did the Wi-Fi modules that are installed in them. One of the key things over here selling to government and security sensitive projects is either the disabling or not having Wi-Fi modules in the amplifiers at all. Is that something that you can talk to, please?
Yeah, so we cannot physically remove the Wi-Fi. You can actually unscrew the antenna on the back, which may be adequate for some government agencies. Within the software, you can turn the Wi-Fi off, and I'll show you how to do that in just a second. And you can actually have the Wi-Fi turn off after a certain time period if your installer wants to be able to use it as well. So we can absolutely disable the Wi-Fi via software. We can remove the antenna, but you cannot remove the entire Wi-Fi chip.
The other alternative would be to use the dumb amplifiers, which obviously don't have Wi-Fi in them as well.
Yep, absolutely. Great point, Michael. So we talked about third-party DSP, and of course we have control modules already set up for our PowerZone Connect amplifiers for third-party DSP. So if you're using a QSYS system, or if you're using a third-party control system like Crestron, AMX, RTI, Control4, you can kind of see the list on the left-hand side there. We do have modules that have been designed to work with those control platforms, and then we also have an open API. It's really simplistic to work with. So if you have a programmer that's used to doing API configuration, they'll be very familiar with the way that manual is written, and that's available on our website, so they can just grab it off the website, as are the different control modules. So that's what we have existing as of today. At ISE in February of this year, we introduced an additional 12 amplifiers, which we're targeting to have out this summer. I don't have an actual official date on that yet, but those will be coming out relatively soon. So these will be our first Sonance branded amplifiers. And there's going to be 12 different versions of these. One of the big things that we needed to have adjusted for the professional market from the original offering that Blaze Audio had was the ability to drive 70-100 volt loads off of a single channel. And so all of these amplifiers will be able to do that. They'll be part of the PowerZone Connect family. So everything that we just talked about as far as the controllers, the software, the functionality is all going to be the same. The I/O on the back is going to be the same. The only real differences are the channel count and the power, which you can see up on the screen here. So 12 different versions, 6 with Dante and 6 without Dante. Just like we just talked about, you're going to purchase this as a SKU. So if you need the Dante SKU, you do have to purchase that in. But you'll see on these 70-100 volt and then 8 ohm, these will be able to drive 4 ohm loads as well, but that will be at a derated power. I don't have that specification at this moment, unfortunately, and I don't know how drastic that will be, but it will be derated from 8 to 4 ohm. And then only 2 of the models will have power sharing. So that's going to be the 300.2 and the 600.4 will have power sharing capability. Okay. These are going to be designed to really be optimized for those 70 volt systems, though, and that was the biggest change that came with these. And like I said, these are going to be out in the summer timeframe. Right. Any other hardware questions before we take a pause here and jump into the software? Shane, anything I missed that you wanted to add?
I was just going to clarify with the new amplifiers that will ship summer for you, winter for us.
Sorry.
That's okay. In terms of inputs, I know the outputs will be slightly different, but in terms of inputs and configuration, that kind of thing, no change, right?
No change. Yep.
So everything we've talked about for the first 20 minutes will apply to these. It will just be, we won't be bridging channels to run 100 volt or 70 volt.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and these are going to be limited to 4-channel models. So, when you're using a Dante model, you'll of course have 4 channels of Dante to work with.
Just got one question here. 70 volt, 100 volt. Do they both have 70 and 100 volt output, or is it just 70?
No, it is. Everything that we've talked about is 70 and 100 volt.
Okay. Any circuit protection on the output stage?
Yes, so we can take a look at that in the software. We are doing that with DSP-based limiters on these devices.
Excellent. Thank you.
Excellent questions. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing here for just a second, which is of course going to prompt a pop-up on my screen because it always likes to do that whenever you make any change. And I'm going to pull open actually a view of our website, and then I'm going to show you where we have some software emulation here. So Michael or Shane, if you can just confirm that that has opened up for you.
Certainly has.
All right, that's fantastic. So this is the Sonance.com website, and we're not going to spend any real time on the website, but this is a great place if you want to, either play along at home, but more importantly, want to come back after this webinar and take a look at the software. If you go up to professional products and then come down to software, you'll see the Power Zone control, and that will take you to this web page. There's of course a ton of information on here about the amplifiers, all of our loudspeakers, but one of the things that we offer here is a Try It Here button, and this allows you to take a look at the software. This is just an emulator, so you're not going to, of course, affect any amplifiers at Sonance, but it'll let you take a look through the software, experience it, and play around with it if you would like to. So definitely the best way if you're a software person to get to know what your capabilities are. You can come here at any time. This is up 24/7. And this is an emulation of an 8-channel Dante-based amplifier. Okay. So the first thing that you're going to see is, of course, the dashboard in the center here, which is what we're looking at. And then we're just using a really basic menu structure on the left-hand side. So like I said earlier, if you're used to setting up, a wireless router or basic devices like that, it's going to be a very familiar look and feel. The dashboard is going to be updated shortly to provide a little bit more information and provide a mute all button, a couple other little features that we felt were necessary. But it's that spot to just quickly, grab a controller, mute a zone, what you might need to do from an end control perspective. We're going to step through each of the menus here. So what you'll see here is I've just selected input, and now we have the different input types across the top, so analog, SPDIF, and Dante. And then we have a mix and a generator here as well. So the generator is just a noise generator, so you can do some testing. And that's of course routable. As we're going through this, if we look at the analog side, we have our sensitivity section, and you're just basing that on what is the device that we're connecting up. So if it's a dynamic microphone, we might select the mic sensitivity. If we're using those unbalanced inputs, we're probably going to select -10 dBV. If we're using professional, normal professional line level gear, we're going to use +4 dBu. And if we're looking at something like a DJ mixer, we're probably going to set that to +14 dBu. So just setting up the sensitivity. If you have a microphone, you're probably going to select your high pass filter on that. And then on the analog side, you just have some additional EQ that you can apply if you need to. As we look at the digital, it's much more basic, right? We're just giving you some gain trim options on those digital inputs. All of our inputs are going to come out of the box in mono, but if you do need to do a stereo setup, you just hit the mono button. It's going to take inputs 1 and 2 then and switch it over to stereo. All of the inputs are also labelable, and I'm just going to label a couple here so that we can kind of be able to follow along as we're looking through the software and have things kind of make sense. So I'm going to just label a music player on inputs 1 and 2. I'm going to make input 3 TV, and we're going to set input 4 to our microphone. Okay. Oops, I clicked that button. And again, this is just so that we can kind of easily follow along if I can type and hit enter at the same time. Okay. Don't really need to set up anything here because we're not going to do any actual signals, but at least give you an idea of how this might be set up. Okay, so we just set up a couple of inputs really quickly. What we're going to see next is the zones. And so we're using zones to do all of our switching as well as our control. And this is a place where we really have quite a bit of control. So as we're looking at a zone, this is where we're going to be able to select from a user perspective what the source is, and then we'll have some advanced control. So I'll kind of explain that as we're going through, and I'm just going to add a couple of labels in here so that it kind of makes sense as we're talking through how you might use these. So I'm going to set zone A up as the dining, zone B up as the bar, and zone C as a patio. So primary input's probably going to be our music player for all of these. We're going to leave that as it is. For the bar, we're going to change that to music player as well. And then for the patio, we're also going to set up that as music player, but maybe we want to use that microphone in order to do some paging outside. So we're going to set that up as our microphone input. And then we're going to say whether we want that priority or ducking. I typically like to use ducking, so we're not completely cutting out the music. And you can do that two different ways. We can either just use the default settings, and then all we have to do is set a reasonable threshold for that microphone. Or if we want to get fancier about it, we can do custom settings. We might want to say you want that to duck about 6 dB, have a relatively short attack time, but maybe we want a decent hold time on that. And a decent release time, so that we have kind of a natural feel, whatever we think is appropriate based on the setting. So you can easily and quickly set up ducking and things like that. You can also kind of use the priority. We have 3 different levels of priority, so you can use those to, if you wanted to create this for source selection and set it up that way, you could, but very, very easy to set up.
Just a couple of quick other questions that we've got here. Are the GUI settings instant set on change? No save, no execute button?
Yeah, so everything that we're doing real time, and it is going to save to the hardware device. I'll show you kind of towards the end here how to back up and save to an external file as well. But yeah, this is all real time.
Okay, and can you adjust individual input levels within a mix via the wall controller, or are you only able to adjust the volume for the complete mix together?
So excellent question, and I'll actually take a step back because I forgot to show you the mix, so that was a good prompt for me. To answer the questions directly, the mix is only, the wall controller is only able to control the zone volume. If you're using a iPad with a dashboard, you are able to affect the mix as well. So just to answer that question quickly, I just dropped back into the mix view. And what we can do in here, you'll see everything was down at 0, or basically muted. But if you did want to have it, so let's say we have a push-to-talk paging microphone, and we always want that page mic to come on, let's say 6 dB over top of the music. We can quickly and easily set that up, and we can do that with any of our different devices. And then through that wall controller, you could select that mix. So if we wanted the mix to be, let's just call it private room, just give us something different to look at. If we always wanted to be able to page into a private room, we would just have this as the selection, and then they would be able to do that. But this is, to answer that question, is going to be that fixed level, and then we're going to adjust the overall level in that zone controller from the wall M if we're using it.
Okay. And once you're in the zones, once your zones are set up, how easy is it for the user to change the listening source for a particular zone or all zones at once?
Yeah, so fantastic question. So to change the source, you're going to do that through the wall controller. You have that rotary knob where you're going to just select the source. We can limit the sources that they're going to see. So if you have 8 different sources on your amplifier, you can say I only want this user or this zone to be able to see these 2. That's all they're going to be able to select. They're just going to rotate to it, press the button, it's going to select it. And then for their volume control, they change to the zone, and then they'll immediately be able to control the volume control for that. They do have to do that individually. So if you wanted to select the source across multiple different zones, so if we wanted to switch the dining and the bar to the television, to do those both, we would have to select those independently.
Paxson, just to call out as well,
yeah.
When you are configuring the wall M, the wall controller, there is an apply button top right corner that you need to hit when you adjust its settings. It's the only time you need to hit apply.
And it will prompt you if you haven't hit apply and you navigate out of that section of the software, you'll get a little pop-up that says, do you want to apply these changes or discard? So it's hard to make a mistake with the software.
So there seems to be a bit of a theme on control here. Is there an app that the users can have to control their system without going to the wall controller?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. It is a common request. Today, we do not have an app available. It's only through the IP address connection.
But you could run that on an iPad and control it from an iPad or something like that if you wanted mobility within your venue.
Absolutely. And the way that we've had people configure that is, basically save a app. You can save a web page or a web address within Safari or Chrome as its own app. And so you can save that as the controller, and then they have a single button press that'll bring up that IP address. Highly recommend either having a static IP address when you're doing that or having a reserved DHCP address, because it does have to be the address of the device. So if you had it on a DHCP server and it was assigned a new address, you'd have to reassociate the iPad app to that.
Again, continuing down the control side of things. So when using the hardware with the wall controller and integration for an automation platform like Control4, can they work in parallel around things like volume and sources?
Yeah, excellent question. So yes, if you're using a software-based controller like Control4, you can absolutely use our Wall-M and their control system. The only place that you'll get into trouble if you're trying to duplicate control is if you're using a analog GPIO control. If you're using an analog GPIO, I wouldn't recommend linking that to a digital controller, because you'll end up with offset gains, and you can get yourself into trouble there, just because there's no way of resetting that analog controller. But yeah, multiple software-based controllers can absolutely be used.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Those are really great questions. All right, just continuing on through the zone controllers. One of the things that we often get asked is, as we're setting up systems, is, I only want my staff to have certain controls, right? They never want the system to be turned down past a point, or they never want the system to be turned up past a point. And that's really easy to set up within the zone controllers. So for each zone, you have the ability to limit the upper limits and the lower limits, and set that. And then you also have the ability to turn off the mute. So if you never want the end user, the person that's actually operating the system, to be able to turn the system off and mute the volume altogether, you can do that. Otherwise, that mute will be available. But again, just really simple to set up and allow those semi-advanced configurations. And then in restrictions is just, we're going to set this up for something like the Wall-M to say, I only ever want to be able to select the music player or the TV in the bar. And that's all they'll be able to select from. And maybe in the restaurant, you only want them to have the music player available. And in the patio, we're going to say, okay, you can select the microphone as well. So if there's a party going on, something out there where you're making a speech, you can have that microphone as your selection as well. And then on the Wall-M, you're only going to see per zone the sources that you've allowed in there, but very simplistic to configure. And then we do have a compressor within the zone. So if you need to have that, you've got it there. Okay. So the zones is where we're doing our source selection. It's where we're enabling some of those advanced mixing, ducking controls, and it's where we're setting up our user controls. The output is just what you'd expect, right? So our outputs, we're going to just throw a couple of labels on here so we can talk through them. Similar to the zones, you're just going to select across the top for what those might be. I'm actually going to say in our bar, we're going to have some full range loudspeakers, and then we're also going to have some bar subs. So we're going to put that in there, and then we're going to throw our patio on here as well. Okay. So always recommend labeling so everybody knows what you're doing. Really only matters for the zones, because that's what the user is going to see. But for our routing, so we of course, we're doing our source selection within our zones, and then our zones are going to be associated with an output. So we'll see here down at the bottom, here's all of our different zones that we configured. So we're going to leave dining on dining. Bar full range is going to be bar. And then our bar zone is also going to feed our bar subs, of course, right? Because we want that same signal going to our full range speakers and our subs. And then our patio is going to be fed by patio. Really simplistic to set up. And of course, you have your different volume controls for your different outputs. So depending on your system, right, our full range volume is probably going to be something different from our sub volume. The technicians would set that up in the field. As we're going through here, we do have some delay. So if you need to put some delay on any portion of your signal, you can do that. You can, of course, do it in your meters, milliseconds, or samples. They're all going to correspond. So if you change one, it's just going to give you the relative on the other. And then we do have some room EQ. And I'm specifically calling this room EQ because this would be when you're actually measuring the system. If you need to do any advanced configuration, I would highly recommend doing that here. Because I always recommend leaving your speaker presets as they were. Now, because we're doing emulation, we don't have a library to pull from, but based on our, the conversation that we had earlier, when you're actually working with an amplifier with the new firmware that should be released shortly, you'll select the From Library button. That will pop up a window that will give you all of the different Sonance loudspeakers that you can select from with different configurations. So if you're working with a professional series loudspeaker, you'll have the option of a 70 or 100 volt preset or a low impedance preset to select from. And what that speaker preset's going to do is it's going to set up your crossovers, so your high pass, your low pass filters. It's going to give you the curve that we recommend for voicing of that loudspeaker. It's going to set up your limiter. Of course, if you're doing this at 100 volt, it's going to set it up as a 100 volt limiter. And it's going to do your output mode as well. So again, that'll actually put it into 100 volt mode. For any Sonance loudspeaker, it will also disable the high pass filter. This will be disabled out of the box moving forwards. And it'll do that full configuration. At that point, it will also lock the speaker preset for you. Now, you can customize the preset and you can go in and see what we've done, or you can manipulate it, but you'll also know if somebody's made a change. So if you've done your system configuration, 6 months later somebody calls you back and says, hey, things aren't sounding right, one of the first places to look is in here and just see if they've customized that preset, and at least tell you if you have a good starting point to go back to. So definitely recommend doing that. I always recommend starting with the presets. And then there's never an issue. We're working with digital EQ. You can always add EQ on top of it without adjusting the EQ that was predefined within the filter. Okay. So this is where we're doing all of our inputs. Yep.
Sorry, Mark's given us another great question here, and I can see it actually, which you might need to talk to here. Can we save, export all the amplifier settings so it can be stored once finally commissioned? That will allow then, a quick reload into a new amplifier if required.
Yeah, so I'm going to answer that in two different ways because it's a great prompt. So if you're always using our, let's say, professional series Surface 63 T loudspeaker, and you have a little tweak that you always like to do with it for some reason, you can export that speaker preset, and then you can always import that preset at a later date. So if you're just wanting to export what the speaker configuration is, you can do that. But then, more to Mark's question, is when you've done your system configuration, and I recommend this for every single amplifier that you ever work with, not only ours, but anybody's, quite frankly, is you can come into Settings, Backup Restore, and Backup to File. At that point, it'll automatically save it into your Downloads folder. Of course, save it somewhere that makes sense to you. And then you have a Restore from File button. So when you are, if you need to make a change, you need to upload it to a new amplifier, or if you're working on, something that's building, stores nationally, you can just import that into that next new amplifier from this Restore from File button. So really easy to work with. If you hit Restore from File, it's going to pop up a little window, and then we'd be able to navigate through our computer as to where that might be. So very, very easy to work with. And there is this restore network settings. Sometimes you want to do that. Of course, sometimes you don't, depending on what you're doing with that file. Great question.
Just a question from across the ditch from Stuart in our New Zealand office. Can delay be applied to a source, or is delay only available on the output zones? Use case for this being is where there's delay with video, and delaying the video audio would resync everything, without affecting the other sources.
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. Unfortunately, it is only on the output side. So if you're only working with one video source, that of course works fine. You just delay, it would delay all of your sources. But if we're working with a music player, that'll have no effect for the end user that's actually experiencing the space. But if you have multiple video sources where you need to do multiple different syncs, unfortunately, we would not be able to handle that within this. We could just do the one delay on the output side.
A follow-up question again about speaker voicings. Do we have any third-party brands that can be added to the library?
We do. So if you go to sonance.com under Professional and then Resources, you'll see within our firmware and software section the list of third-party presets that we have there. I don't remember all of them off the top of my head. I think there's 1 or 2 dozen that are up on the website today, somewhere in that range.
Excellent. Great questions. Thanks, guys. Keep them coming.
Absolutely. So we've gone through our inputs, our zone, our output. This is, of course, where we're doing all of our audio setup and manipulation. The last thing that we have here, which we poked out a little bit, is our settings section. I'm just going to walk through a couple of different sections in here. We're not going to spend a ton of time on this, but just to kind of show you what this is. So within settings, we have system information. This is where we can talk about the venue as well as potentially who set it up. So definitely recommend doing this so you have something to come back to. A little bit of information about the device. I'm going to skip down to the bottom here to the LAN, and then we'll come back up to a couple of these others. So LAN is, of course, going to be our wired network connection, where we can either set it up as static or DHCP, depending on how you want to use the system. And then we also have our Wi-Fi section, which we talked about a little bit earlier. So within the Wi-Fi, we can just disable it completely. So if you did have one of those government installations, if this is adequate, we can have the Wi-Fi disabled, and it will not turn back on. If we put it on to, oh, sorry, that was for the, excuse me, that was for when the LAN is connected. Up at the top here is where we're enabling and disabling the Wi-Fi altogether. Sorry about that. But we can do that. If you don't have a government installation, but you don't necessarily want it broadcasting Wi-Fi at all times, what I recommend doing is using this disable Wi-Fi after a certain period. It's nice to have the Wi-Fi on for setup and configuration and to be able to get back to a network. And by having it set up like this, if you have an issue with the amplifier, you need to reconnect to it. If you just turn off the power it back on, that Wi-Fi will start broadcasting again for whatever period of time you designate it for. So it's kind of a nice backup to have. But you can either set it up, as we mentioned earlier, as an access point where it's going to broadcast its SSID so that you can connect directly to the amplifier, or you can set it up as client where you're going to connect to that building Wi-Fi. So if you need to use it in that way, you can do that as well. So if you don't have a wired connection, you can still connect to their network if they have Wi-Fi coverage. As we come back up through it, external, I'm going to discard those changes. So like we talked about earlier, I made a change that required an apply, so it prompted me for it. So when we're looking at external devices, that's going to be where we're going to do our wall controllers. And here we have some basic things that we can set up as far as the network and the visuals and for the wall M itself. And we can also do things like define what zones are available within here. So we're able to set up our zones. As you see, I'm adding them. So now I can affect through this wall M the dining zone, the bar zone, and the patio zone. If this wall M was just for the bar, I just deselect everything else. And then now I can only affect the source select and the volume control in the bar. Of course, we'd want to label that then as well. But when you're doing those restrictions, it's just a matter of saying what you want to give them access to or remove access from. And then we can do some other things like set up, what does it look like? Is the button going to glow? When does the screen time out? That sort of thing. Speaker library will be there once we have a speaker library loaded in. Password protection is that basic password, so we can set a password to connect to the device. And then once we have that set, I'm just going to throw something in there really quick. Once we have that set, we can then also provide a user control password. And this is where we're going to restrict what's showing up on the dashboard. So if you are doing that iPad-based control, recommend setting up that user control password, and then you can just limit them to which zones we want them to be able to affect on that iPad. But we do want to do that when we're setting up for an iPad control, or else they just see everything. And this just cleans up the view for them primarily. I'm going to discard that. Power management here is just what's going to affect the power going to standby mode and coming out. So we can either have that based on analog audio, digital audio, a trigger from a control system, that sort of thing to wake up the amplifier. And then the last thing I wanted to take a look at here really is the output routing. So we mentioned earlier, every amplifier will have that SPDIF output, so 2 channels of SPDIF out. And then on your Dante amplifiers, you'll have 4 channels of Dante output. What's nice about this is we can select any of our input sources. So any of our analog, digital input sources. If you're working with a SPDIF output, you can select one of your Dante inputs. You can select any of your zones. So if I needed to have kind of my main zone with a certain power load, and then maybe I've got a bunch of subs on that same zone, and so I just needed a larger power amplifier. But it's really just the same zone, but now I needed, let's say, 1,000 watts on that bar zone. If I send that bar out, that SPDIF out, anything that I change on there, source or volume control, is going to be the zone out. So the same thing that's going to the full range loudspeakers is going to go to the SPDIF output, and an easy way to just add additional power onto any one of your zones. And you can do that, as I mentioned, with your SPDIF or your Dante outs. And we can also take the same thing from our mixes. So that private room that we set up earlier, where we had the music player as well as our microphone coming on, we can send that out as well through any of our digital outputs. So a really robust way of treating the digital outs and how we're working with these amplifiers.
And Paxson, the volume control on the wall keypad follows the zone. So volume up or down will extend to the second amplifier in that case, because we've set the output to a zone output. Absolutely.
Yep. Yeah. So a really nice way of adding additional power for a zone that you might need to control. So hopefully you've seen that anytime you can get onto this Try Me section through Sonance.com, like I mentioned earlier, and take a look at this software. But hopefully you see it's really easy to work with, manipulate. We basically, as we're talking through it over the last 20 minutes, set up a really basic restaurant type system. And it doesn't take anything more than that to do this. Obviously at this point, as we talked about, we'd want to go through, do that backup to file, and have that available, saved to our computer. So that is the quick overview of the Sonance electronics, our Power Zone and our Power Zone Connect families.
I really appreciate that, Paxson, so much, and Shane as well. Another question just came in. Can the SPDIF out be set as LFE for a zone?
So yes is the short answer, right? So we would take that zone within our digital outputs. We'd go in there. I'm going to say this is our bar zone, right? So that's the routing of that output. So now everything, all of the information that's going to the bar zone is going to be included in there. But keep in mind, that's going to be the full frequency. We're going to do our crossovers within our output settings to our full range loudspeakers. I'm just going to say we set that high pass filter at 90 hertz, 100 hertz, wherever you want that to be. And then when you're doing that output on that second amplifier that our SPDIF was feeding, that's where we would set up our preset for our subwoofers and adjust the crossover to align with however you wanted that to mate with your full range loudspeakers of your primary amplifier. So absolutely a great use case for when we would use the SPDIF out.
Paxson, I have one greedy little question to ask you.
Yeah.
You said earlier you wouldn't spend any time on the website, but a wise man told me not long ago that we had spent a lot of time redoing our website, and I would love you to spend like 2 minutes on showing how easy it is to find the spec and downloads and CAD files for all of the product we sell today.
Yeah. Absolutely happy to run through that. And if you had other questions about the amplifier software, please keep them coming, and I'll kind of go through this really quick. So Sonance.com, as you'll see, is where I've navigated to. And the way that we've divided up is through the different markets, because of course the speakers that we're using, speakers and electronics that we're using in residential, professional, and marine, there's a lot of crossover, and you'll see a lot of products in both sections, but they're also a little bit different. And especially, we want to make it as easy to navigate to as possible for you. So if we're going to professional, we're just going to select products in the middle here. We select the series that we want. So if we wanted to look at some surface mount series, surface mount products in professional series, we can just click on any of these names if we want to, and that'll take you to the family page. The nice thing about this, that's kind of cool, is there we go. If we just want to look at what a couple speakers are, we can do that. We can get a really quick comparison. Say, okay, this was the one that I wanted. I'm going to jump into that product. Go down to specifications. If you need to copy the specs, you can do that. You can see what's related to that product, and then you have your download sections as well. This is kind of nice. You can select a couple of things to download. It's going to group them for you, or you can share them. So if I wanted to send something to Shane so he can learn, about the instruction manual for a surface mount product, I can share that with him, or I can download multiple things at the same time. So we've tried to make it as easy as possible. If I haven't selected anything, I can just download all or share all. So we're trying to make it, so you can grab all the files you might want. And then if you had a question for us about this product, you can throw it into here. It'll tell us what page you were looking at, so we'll know exactly what that question might be. So we've tried to make it really easy. The other thing that you'll see, and you'll see this across all the different families, is a resources section. So again, if you have questions specifically about professional product or residential product, you can get to that easily. We talked about those different third-party speaker presets. We can gather that here as well. So we have our firmware, software updates, speaker presets, control drivers. That's all available through the website. And again, if you're doing that Control 4 system, you can just grab that module here as well.
Thanks,
Shane, what
Paxson.
else is there? Yeah. So did I miss anything that you wanted to see?
No, I just wanted to point out sort of that differential between, if you like, the marketing side of our website and then the solutions side of the website. Yeah. So that within a couple of clicks you can find every file. And the point I've been driving home with people on the road for the last few weeks is we don't have there aren't very many files that we have internally that we don't share on this file. So there should be nothing you need to really come looking for. It should be listed on each product page, anything you need like CADs, downloads, firmware, etc.
Yeah, and I would say we are always looking for updates and ways to improve the website. So if there's something you don't see on the website that you would like to see, shoot Shane an email. He's great at jumping on these kind of things. Or you can also, like the page that we were just looking at, was send us a note directly as well. Either one. But if there's something that you're not seeing, please do let us know, and we'll do our best to address it.
All right. Last call for any questions whilst we have Paxson and Shane on board. If not, guys, thank you so much. Great presentation. Really appreciate your time and enthusiasm, and yeah, we certainly appreciate it here. For those guys, I know most of you guys that are on the call, I've just had a quick look through the list. If you don't know me, I'm not new to Amber, I'm not new to the industry either, but I do have a new role within Amber now, which is the brand manager for our audio brands, which does include Sonance Pro and Blaze. So feel free to reach out to your account managers with any questions that you may have, or if not, feel free to reach out to me as well. My email is pretty simple. It's just mguest@ambertech.com.au. So really appreciate your time for everybody attending. Again, thank you, Paxson. Thank you, Shane, and have a great day moving forward. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Michael.
Thanks, everybody.